Our digital producer, Wajahat Ali, is here looking out for your live feedback. Waj, when people first hear about this online harassment, their natural responses will just get offline. But so much of our lives are online, it makes that kind of an impossible solution.
Yeah, and Mrs. Donald Trump IV, a loyal streamer, says this is a reflection of our culture and society where women are apparently responsible for all of it. Just blame them, make excuses, explain and justify. And she says if you're a woman, you're on your own. And Vern makes up a point. He goes, look, people of all ages need to rethink this documenting your personal acts, be it a nude photo or video. Zulfikar says, well, these people should report these suspicious behavior to the police or they shouldn't take notice of it, but that's easier said than done. And here's the story of Anne. The person who stalks me lives very far away. I have had to choose between not having an online life or accepting my stalker.
Not much of a choice.
Not much of a choice.
Well, for domestic violence survivors, physical separation from their abuser doesn't always mean the end of their ordeal. For many, stalking, harassment, and abuse, as Waj just demonstrated, continues online. And this abuse takes a lot of forms, from the extreme of revenge porn, which is when intimate images or videos of an ex are posted online, to constant messaging and publishing of personal details like your address or your credit card numbers. In today's digital world, so much of our interaction, personally and professionally, is via the internet, making going offline not really such a great option. So what are the gaps in the justice system that allow some of this abuse to thrive online? And are there ways that survivors can turn technology in their favor? To explore these issues, we are joined by John Wilkinson, a former criminal prosecutor who specialized in cases involving domestic violence and sexual assault. From Sacramento, Alexis Moore is with us. She is a domestic violence survivor who founded the advocacy group Survivors in Action. And on Skype, Marianne Franks, an associate professor at the University of Miami School of Law, who's helped draft legislation dealing with online domestic abuse. Thanks to all of you for being here. Marianne, you know, if you don't know a victim or you haven't been victimized in this way, it's really hard to understand the severity of this. Set this up for us. What kinds of things are you seeing in the online sphere that happen in these violent and harassing relationships?
Well, we're seeing in these kinds of abusive relationships, we're seeing people taking the most intimate images, moments that were shared between two people, and having this person threaten to use those images against the other person. So you have someone who's thinking about leaving an abusive relationship, and her partner tells her, if you do that, I'm going to take these pictures that I have of you and I'm going to send them to your parents. I'm going to send them to all of your friends. I'm going to send them to your boss. I'm going to upload them to one of these websites where thousands of people are going to be able to see you. So we're talking about women who are faced with the possibility that someone is really going to try to destroy their lives. This was always possible, of course, even before the internet, but it's so much easier now for someone with really just a click of a button to be able to really put into good use a threat to destroy your reputation, to destroy any other intimate relationships you might have, to really lead you to think that you have no escape from this type of attention and surveillance.
Alexis Moore, you're a domestic violence survivor. You also are a victim advocate. This actually happened to you. I mean, put a face on this experience for us. Tell us your story.
You know, I actually physically left an abusive relationship and thought that would be it. It was very difficult to leave. However, that didn't stop the abuser from coming after me. Because of technology, he was able to stalk and harass and basically destroy my life for a certain period of time until I learned how to maneuver around him. But I can say this, that technology is definitely a weapon, and those in abusive relationships, whether it be male or female, they need to definitely consider technology, and we all need to be educated in regards to technology being used as a weapon, and today that's known as cyber stalking.
Well, our online community has been engaging the topic using the hashtag AJAMStream, Lisa.
Yeah.
And speaking about technology, Nick says, I wonder if it is possible for victims to move on, especially now when the internet is a giant data mill and, quote, it never forgets. Everything is stored. Diana says anonymity is important if there's stalking involved due to technology. And Jahara says if the ex still locates the victim online, do not engage in any exchange and definitely block the ex. Words may sting, but they cannot harm physically. However, according to an Urban Institute survey, John, I'm going to go to you with this. This is a fascinating stat. 25% of dating teens report they've been digitally victimized by their parents. And what's worse, 52% of digital abuse victims said they were also physically abused. Explain this phenomenon, what we're looking at right now.
Well, I think it's just another manifestation of the dynamics of domestic abuse. It's not about a romantic relationship. It's about power and control and how these abusers try and exercise that power and control over their victims. And when they don't have that physical access, they're going to do anything they can to gain access to those folks. And the more we live our lives online, the more they're going to go to technology to gain that access and exercise that power and control and continue the abuse.
John, I want to get back to you in a second to address some gaps in law enforcement. Alexis, when you were going through your ordeal, you reported your situation to police, what, 86 times?
Yes, 86 or more, in fact. And the bottom line is, when technology is used to stalk, it's different. Law enforcement can't put a crime scene tape around it. There isn't any way for them to really pinpoint what's happening. There's no physical bruises or broken bones. So what we face as victims is this technological barrier of, hey, we're being abused, but it's technology rather than the physical abuse. So that puts us behind the 8 ball automatically. And then when you add on the fact that technology is out there everywhere, and the batterer in this particular case, in mine anyhow, was very sophisticated in that he knew he was always going to be one step ahead of me because he had my social security number, he had my date of birth, he knew my mother's maiden name. It made my life a living hell. So I can say to those out there watching that physical abuse is one thing, and the broken bones and the bruises do heal. However, when you're being stalked using technology, which today we know to be cyber stalking, it's one difficult task to overcome.
John, I'm still stuck on Alexis telling us she reported this situation to police more than 86 times. Did police and law enforcement fail her, or are there such gaps in the system that cops just can't address these issues?
It could be a combination of both, and it might depend on your state's laws. So as technology outpaces the law, sometimes there are gaps that we need to figure out ways to close. And it might be by relying on other laws like harassment, invasion of privacy laws, things like that, that may not give you that big a punch to go back after these guys, but at least you can do something to hold them accountable. But it also may be that they're not recognizing the technology that's at play. Sometimes victims don't realize that technology is at play, but also sort of it might be that they don't appreciate how traumatic this continued abuse can be because, as you said, there's no broken bones, there's no bloody nose, anything like that, and so we might not be taking it as seriously as we should, particularly where there's a history of physical violence, because you're just reliving that violence through online now.
Well, John, Lisa, our own senior digital producer Latoya Peterson tweeted in, I had one ex that cyber stalked me for a while and might still. I had to change my phone number, I had to leave EasyJournal, I even had to block him on MySpace. Amy, on the other hand, says, listen, all the victims just stay off the internet. Don't make your personal information public knowledge. And we have a video comment from Eva. Give her a listen.
Some things that you can do in advance because privacy does not work retroactively, and one of them is making sure that you don't click on strange links or download strange software because it may be covertly installing a remote access tool on your machine that gives an attacker access to your data.
Marianne, what's your response to this online technology, spyware, malware, that especially is infecting, a cell phone, and that's enabling this stalking to continue? How are we responding to that?
We're not responding to it very well. That's a big part of the problem because, as was already pointed out, there's, if we look at the history of the way that stalking, violence against women, domestic violence generally has been treated, we haven't been very good at the offline abuse. So we're still catching up in terms of taking that seriously and making sure that we adequately protect victims. When you add to that the technological aspect, you've got a lot of people on the ground, including the victims, but especially we're now talking about law enforcement who don't understand the technology. They're not really sure what's happening. They're not really sure how they can track it. They're not really sure about the evidence. And so you've got all these questions and all these ambiguities that you really didn't have before. And so you see why it is that many people quite wisely are suggesting you've got to think about this in advance, because it's true that with at least certain types of images, certain types of information, you can't get any of it back, even if you're able to successfully prosecute or sue somebody. So we have to think harder about the ways that we can actually use technology, the way that we can use all of the resources at our disposal to protect ourselves, but we also have to make sure that we're educating law enforcement, educating lawyers, educating judges about just what the scope of this damage is and how we need to all be able to intervene against it.
And educating women about the technology that's out there. I mean, when you go to the hotline.org, which is a national domestic violence hotline, this alert pops up. I've got part of it on my screen here, and it says computer use can be monitored and is impossible to completely clear. If you are afraid your internet usage might be monitored, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, i.e. call rather than contact them online. John, talk about the level of awareness or lack of in terms of all these surreptitious technologies.
Yeah, a lot of people just aren't aware, including law enforcement, including prosecutors, and most importantly, victims. And it is important that we educate victims so that they can make choices about how they're going to protect their online identity, their online lives. But I don't want to get in a situation where we end up blaming victims who have done nothing wrong, who want to continue to enjoy living virtually, living online, and doing things that anybody would want to do. So we do want to hold the offenders accountable for their behavior and not blame victims. It is important to empower them to make choices about online safety and educate them about the things they can do.
And to be aware of all the technology.
Exactly, and what might be used to victimize them as they're doing those things.
Well, imagine that an ex posts nude photos of you online. You would think that would be actionable, but in most every state, it's totally legal. And there is not much, if anything, that you can do about it. We're going to take a look at the phenomenon of revenge porn and hear one woman's shocking story when we return. Welcome back. We're talking about domestic abuse going online. Some exes go so far as to post what's called revenge porn, sharing nude or compromising images of their former partner online. It happened to our next guest, and she had such a difficult time getting help, she ended up starting her own organization to assist other women going through what she did. Becca Wells, founder of Women Against Revenge Porn, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you.
So Becca, like a lot of people, you occasionally Google yourself. One day you typed in your name and the unthinkable happened.
Yes, I went to Google, typed in my full name, and there was a website link, and it claimed to have explicit images of me, and I've never submitted explicit images of myself online. So I thought it was probably spam, but I clicked on it anyway, and up popped a nude gallery of photos of me, and above the gallery was posted my full name and the city and the state where I lived in very big, bold letters. And I was shocked. I was floored. I lost my breath. I was mortified, absolutely mortified.
And you came to find out that allegedly the fellow that you were dating, that you suspect posted these, also posted pictures of other women?
Yes, there are at least 9 women in my town. Their photos are posted as well. Their photos are still up on the internet. I have called most of them to inform them that their photos are up. 99% of them are too embarrassed and humiliated to deal with it, so I haven't heard back from them. It's really tragic.
Marianne Franks, is revenge porn abuse?
It absolutely is. I mean, what we're looking at is a situation where someone takes the most intimate pictures, photographs, videos of you and uses them to punish you, to shame you, to humiliate you. It's a breach of confidentiality. It's a form of sexual use without consent. It is absolutely a form of abuse.
Well, our online community is engaging this topic, and there's this debate, Lisa, about how do we prosecute this. California has a bill which made it into a misdemeanor, and we have Nweka here says the rapid escalation of online activity during the last 2 decades has given rise to a lot of legal issues that are still unaddressed. Technology moves much faster than institutions that might protect us. Mrs. Alexander says the First Amendment should protect victims of abuse and bullying, not protect the aggressor. But here's a video comment from Kathy. Give it a listen.
Revenge porn, I think laws against it, like the one in California, effectively criminalize speech. So while it's a terrible thing and I would like to see it eradicated, I think that unfortunately in that instance, the ramifications of, for example, keeping a journalist from being able to reveal embarrassing photos of Anthony Weiner without facing jail time make it not worth the cost.
All right, John, you just heard that. And ACLU also says that this legislation in California might infringe on First Amendment free speech protections. What is your response?
I don't think so, because of the intent that the California law requires, that you demonstrate that they're intending to do this to humiliate somebody or to impose some emotional distress on an individual. And if it's narrowly tailored to cover this specific putting explicit images online, then I think you're probably okay. You do have to worry anytime you're passing a law that might infringe on a fundamental constitutional right, and you have to be careful about how you do it. You don't want it to be overbroad or void for vagueness. You want to clearly establish what the behavior is that you're trying to stop. And I think California has done that, and I think it's going to be okay.
Marianne, the bill that just got signed into law in California, a lot of victims say it doesn't go far enough because in order to be prosecuted under it, you have to be the person who took the picture. So in the circumstances that we're talking about, generally, these women have exchanged photos with their partners. Their partner isn't necessarily the one who took it.
Right, that's a real problem in the law. There are two major problems, I think, actually, with California's law. One is that, yes, if you took the picture yourself, you the victim, and you gave it to someone, and that's the someone who then takes this and discloses it without your consent, then the California law doesn't apply. And some early research has suggested that as much as 80% of the people who are affected by this did take the pictures of themselves in the first instance. The second problem is actually the intent to cause emotional distress requirement. I actually disagree that this is a good move on the part of California, because what we've seen is that now that revenge porn has become big business, there are many people like Hunter Moore and others who are not doing this. They're not trafficking in this material because they have some sort of problem with the victims or even know the victims or are trying to harass them. They just want to make a buck. So if we really want to have strong laws against this, we have to make sure, as was pointed out before, that they are narrowly drafted, that we're only talking about a very narrow category of images, but also that we don't impose things like intent to cause emotional distress requirements, and that we cover all victims, whether they took the pictures of themselves or not.
Well, Facebook and various other websites and dating sites have guidelines that they say protect people who've been victimized, but do they go far enough? Tell us what you think. We're going to get to that right after the break. Welcome back. We're discussing domestic abuse going online. And before the break, we asked you if various social networking sites and dating sites were doing enough to protect victims. And Waj, looks like a number of people are already tweeting in their thoughts on it.
Yeah, they're tweeting in their thoughts, and our online community is also giving some suggestions. Here's Nancy on Facebook. She goes, either gender needs to document everything, and you need to refuse to be a victim. Even if they, the stalker, finds you online, do not acknowledge them except to turn them into site owners and administrators and file police reports. However, Arya says Facebook only allows people you add to comment on your wall. Unless people you add are a pervert as their friend, well, it's not that easy. And Zulfar Ali says social websites should make such privacy policy that can reduce such activities, and users, however, should be careful while using social apps. But we'll go back to Anne. She says, my stalker has tried following my online friends to get more information about me. All these online blocking and report functions are useless to me.
So, Becca, you know, there are various networking sites say they're participating to find solutions and protect victims. What's been your experience when you've dealt with, you know, Facebook and LinkedIn and various other sites? Are they collaborating with victims and law enforcement to try to help adequately solve the problem?
You know, in my experience, they haven't. I had a specific incident with Facebook in March of this past year. I gave their attorney an email, and I told them, I said, there is a revenge porn website. It was called Pink Meth. I was on that website. It's now defunct. But Pink Meth was linking to each victim's Facebook account in order to facilitate harassment. And that's how I found out I was on this site. People started emailing me. I got Facebook emails. So what I did is I gave Facebook's attorney an email and said, hey, I just want to let you know that this particular revenge porn website is violating or abusing your terms of service, because they actually did do something a couple years ago with another revenge porn website, and then 2 days later the revenge porn website operator shut his site down. So I thought, Facebook has a lot of clout and they have a lot of power, and they could have sent a cease and desist letter to this revenge porn website owner, but I never heard anything back from them.
John, is it the responsibility of these individual websites to police and vet, or is this something that might be more effectively and efficiently dealt with at a legislative level?
I think you can do both, and they have law enforcement units at Facebook, at internet service providers, phone companies that really work well with law enforcement. But there are issues sometimes when individual victims try and reach out to protect themselves and get things taken down or get access to things just to find out what's being said about them.
And more often than not, do they have success with that?
I think sometimes they have trouble doing that on their own, and sometimes you actually have to involve law enforcement, and that can be difficult because law enforcement's going to have some level of either probable cause or something to move forward. But they do work well with law enforcement at Facebook and other internet service providers where they have a law enforcement unit that can really help speed things along and works well with them. But legislation would be really helpful too.
Alexis?
This is Alexis Moore.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Alexis Moore in Sacramento. I have to admit that that is our biggest concern at Survivors in Action, and my own personal belief is that Facebook and Google and all of the Yahoo and everybody, they're not doing enough to make it easy for victims to help themselves, as what we call self-advocate. So yes, there's a lot more they can do on their side to help us out. And yes, law enforcement, they are on our side, victim side, but they are so frustrated. Thousands and thousands of man hours trying to get Facebook to comply and Google or any other website host in order to get evidence they need to prosecute. So what I'm saying out there to everybody out there that has a website or a Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and everyone else is, please help us. Victims need your help. Social media is here to stay, and the internet's here to stay. We call it the wild west for a reason. But we need everybody to help us out because victims are out there being left behind, and there's a lot more that can be done on their end to ensure that no victim is left behind.
Well, Alexis, speaking about victims being proactive, I brought up on my page here Becca's website, Women Against Revenge Porn. And for our viewers at home, check it out. Here's the letter she wrote to Facebook regarding pink meth. And specifically about some other organizations that are helping out. We had NNEDV, which is a national network to end domestic violence, tweet into us. They said, be safe online by managing your privacy settings. Limit who sees what you share. And they gave us a great link to their website, which has a lot of tips. Here are all the online privacy and safety tips. Marianne, going to go to you with this. Give our viewers some tips here about how to move forward. What organizations and what online spaces are really doing a great job for being a great resource for victims and those who are suffering from online abuse?
Well, Becca's site is a great resource, so I recommend starting there. There's also Holly Jacobs' site, endrevengeporn.org. There's the organization that I work with Holly and a few others, Cyber Civil Rights Initiative. Check that one out. There's a site called Without My Consent. These are all terrific resources because they give you information about what's happening. They give you information about how you can protect yourself. They put you in contact with lawyers and others who can try to help you. So definitely start there. But really, it's a kind of thing where we're going to need social norms to change as well. It's a complex problem. We need law enforcement to be on this. We need to have private companies like Google, Facebook, and others to be on this. We need your average citizen to be on this, to not accept this kind of behavior, and to say to Facebook and to say to Google, you've taken other situations and other bad contexts and you've actually addressed them. There was a recent controversy over online mugshots, and you had Google responding to that saying, we don't really think that it's fair for users to be harmed this way. People can stand up, they can say this is something that shouldn't be happening, and they really can make this change.
John, you speak on this topic a lot, and one of the things that you say is there has to be some outside-the-box thinking in terms of protecting victims. How so?
Well, looking at your laws, what laws do I have? In each of these situations where there's this revenge porn, which is a horrible name for this, but that's the term of art now. What else was going on in that relationship? Is this one more act in a course of conduct that might constitute stalking? Are there other criminal laws that might have been violated? Use of computer to harass. It could be invasion of privacy. Some criminal laws that don't just have to do with this one incident, but maybe there's more going on. There probably was abuse going on in that relationship that I want to know about, and maybe there's another way to go after these folks instead of trying to go after them under laws that really don't exist yet or aren't adequate to cover or protect our victims at this point.
Our community is chiming in. Indigo says, betraying the privacy of an ex-partner in such ways is appalling. What goes around comes around, and they'll get theirs in the end. Kenji says, domestic abuse victims shouldn't have to go offline to avoid further abuse. Harassment online should be punishable just as it is in person. Becca, with a little bit of time left, what are your parting responses here?
I think this is a really complicated issue. I don't think it's just a matter of like shutting yourself down online. That's not the solution. The solution is to criminalize this act. Right now, the burden is on victims to vindicate themselves. Law enforcement will not help them. I filed a lawsuit, to be honest with you. I'm probably not going to have justice. The guys are evading service of process. I think the ultimate solution is criminalization of revenge porn for companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter to get on board and start supporting victims, especially when victims file a complaint saying, hey, there's some photos of me on Facebook and they're inappropriate. But you know, my experience is they don't listen.
Yeah. Look, we've got to end the conversation here, but thanks to all of our guests, John Wilkinson, Alexis Moore, Marianne Franks, and Becca Wells. Really appreciate the conversation this evening. And thanks to our online community. You kept the discussion incredibly lively. We would expect nothing less from you. Until our next show, we'll see you online.